Music Multiverse listeners, it's time for a catalog review show. It's time we're going to head to Disney's hometown of Orlando, Florida. Why would we do that? The land of happiness and kids running around and families having all kinds of fun at an expense that I can't even fathom at this moment. But anyway, I digress in that regard. No, they didn't make the artists, the band, but in a town that has that much money, influence, and art going on around it, is it tougher or is it easier? I would think it's tougher. When I think of Orlando, it seems more of a destination area than a living area. Sort of like Las Vegas. But nonetheless, they're this post-grunge quartet, while maybe having always had a hand and heart and sound in adult contemporary kind of songwriting, uniquely have etched out a career that has now spanned 30 years. Brian Yale, bass guitar, Paul Doucette, songwriter, drums, rhythm guitar, backing vocals, and Kyle Cook, lead guitar and vocals. And then, of course, some singer, songwriter, guitarist, keyboardist, and that voice that makes the listener pay attention and females melt. Rob.
Not just females.
Yeah. Oh, no, stop.
Males too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's another show.
Yes, this is the catalog review show of Matchbox 20. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's Matchbox 20. You've done rock groups. You've done big things. What started out as an interesting little bitter secret in 1990, which ended in a lawsuit, 3 years of battles, and an eventual settlement out of court, even wound up with the debut of that band releasing in 97, 1 year after the smash success of Matchbox 20's debut. One can assume that might have been probably part of the settlement, maybe, that they, well, you're going to do this, but our album is definitely releasing. This is Tabitha's Secret. Shh. Sort of sounds dirty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is Rob Thomas. This is Paul Doucette and the crew with another individual who was pissed because the band wasn't going to be anymore. Mm-hmm. It's actually good. It's really good. It's Matchbox 20, really. I mean, come on. Now that they were able to put, anything on the cover, right? This is their debut record. They can put anything on the cover. So, But I accidentally stumbled onto this. Tabitha's Secret. This is a used bin. All right. This is $1.
Yay!
I didn't spend big money on this. But Don't Play With Matches is the title of the record. Seeing it there for several passes. I must have seen this for 4 years.
And didn't know who it was.
No one grabbed that. They went Tabitha's. No. I mean, if you look closely, there's a building on fire in the back that sort of looks like the White House, but it's not. And there's a whole bunch of people in black coats standing in the front. It looks kind of cultish. I think somebody in the prog world should have picked this up, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Although there's no pentagram or there's no sphere or anything. So our triangle.
Just music addicts with a large collection would have something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. That would be. Anyway.
I have no idea.
I picked it up and I see Rob Thomas's name on it. And I'm like, what the? You know what I thought? Oh, there's another Rob Thomas.
Yes, and right? I probably was talking about him.
Hey, there's one making millions more than the four of us combined will ever make in the NHL right now.
Yeah,
true. There's another Rob Thomas, right? Just like there was another Michael Bolton.
Yeah, there was.
Is there though?
Okay, that's a sub reference. I hope somebody gets. So, and their producer for years was also in that band as a songwriter, and he produced all the Matchbox 20 records up until maybe I'll remember which one by the time we go on. So that would be the first lawsuit for Matchbox 20, but it wouldn't be the last. No, this band has got it in spades, baby. They would actually be sued by the man on the cover of the debut record because he didn't agree to that.
Wait.
Yes.
I just
Speaking
have
of
to.
Sue's,
Was that CD for the whole 4 years in the same spot?
Yes.
Sorry, I know it's a weird question.
No, it's not actually. It's interesting.
I just wonder if every time they saw you walking towards the door,
They put it there.
anyway,
We're-
continue.
Hey,
Continue.
here's an asshole get take Tabitha's secret. Come here. You know what?
dangling it over his
I
head.
mentioned this in
Are we
last
live?
Sunday's Unknown Sunday, that there are times where I can go through the record store, right? And at one time a week, all right, bang, 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 because I already know what's there because I've been there last week. Then there's those times where I need something, like I need a fix, and I will take my time. And this is one of those times that I took my time.
Okay, there
Now,
you go.
I might not have been rewarded. I might have got something like Huffamoose, which I've got sitting there, which I haven't listened to in forever.
I don't want to ask.
Yeah, well,
No.
it's a nice cover of Carousel. Anyway, no, enough of this. Rob Thomas is
Let's
waiting.
go.
That
Yeah.
sounds like
Yes,
a way
they
to
were sued by the guy who has picture day. They'd settle that out of there. But no matter where you fall on the music spectrum, whether you're a prog fan, adult contemporary jazz, you would had a hard time avoiding this alternative rock band and their rock songs at any time. You know, they actually are certified diamond. That album is certified diamond. That's over 10 million albums sold. They're in company with only about 50 other albums that have done that over time.
Wow.
And several of them are greatest hits, which shouldn't be
Oh.
allowed to be in there because that is not an album. That's a greatest hits package. So separate that. They climb even closer to those other albums like Michael Jackson's Thriller, Alanis Morissette, the country of Shania Twain, and those others, right? So anyway, I think
And
that's
for
amazing.
those and for those viewing with us, there's one caveat that all four of us have left out for the night. And it is simply, as I pull it up right now, there was a compilation album that they created, but it basically started off as an EP. Exile on Mainstream. One of my favorite Matchbox 20 songs came off that album. How Far We've Come is a favorite of mine. Technically an EP, technically something that we would put into the rotation. Did not make it in our list of what we are labeling as an album review.
No,
However,
because it's actually was released as a greatest hits technically when it was all done.
Technically, but I don't know how we like to blur the lines here on this show, but I will say that a 7-song EP could be separated from the back end of that album that was the greatest hits, where the 7 songs in the prior could have made an EP worth discussing. But that worth notably early on here that's not going to be included in the list, but is a worthwhile mention of an actually pretty solid recording.
Yeah. So on all that, I tell you diamond. I tell you the other one is certified multiple platinum as well, the follow-up. And I think another one gets into maybe platinum or closing in on it. They have no Grammy wins, no American Music Award wins, nothing.
I know.
They have only won a People's Choice Award, and they won twice in Australia as having the most played foreign songs. So that's kind of cool how a country has like most played foreign songs. So they won that twice. Once for Bent and once for all your reasons. Yeah, all your reasons. So they have been eligible for the Hall of Fame actually since 2022, which might be a little early, but if you think about it, they're already in the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Okay.
But all the other indicators,
which by name makes that a lot of sense.
yes, it does. And I will say this: people would think that Matchbox 20 is Rob Thomas. No, that entire band writes those songs. The entire band plays. Matchbox 20 is a different animal than a lot of some of the parts. And the parts have done some things too. I'll acknowledge that Paul Doucette has a record that I listened to. His was called Gonna Kill Me. I'm not gonna remember.
But we're not gonna.
I know Kyle Cook's was called The Wolves, and that it's a good CD. Kind of in the same wheelhouse of the genre, but delivered differently. But yes, they've all had. I mean, yes, Rob Thomas's career in the solo realm has been larger. But it's their vocal, right? These guys also sing. They're not bringing in other people to sing. They're
Mhm.
singing. They have the melody. They have all that too. So I'll check out those albums too. So today we're gonna go over the catalog, and that is 5 albums, starting with Yourself or Someone Like You, then Mad Season, um, More Than You Think You Are, North, and then Where the Light Goes. So we'll start off. We'll go one. We'll just do one because this is short. So number 5, Deb, start us off.
All right. Okay. Well, and this wasn't because Alex started with it and then dropped off the call, but my number 5 is North,
Okay.
from 2012. I'll have to just kind of preface this whole exercise by the fact that I only knew their older stuff
Mhm.
and then Rob Thomas's solo stuff. So when I came into this activity, there were a couple albums I hadn't heard. I had heard a couple of the songs on them. But so it was kind of hard for me to do this, and I had to listen to them several times. And basically what I did was I just went, okay, there's 12 tracks on this album. I like, I maybe, I know. And did a rating system that way. And so the lowest score on my listen challenge here was North.
Okay. Sue.
Well, here we go. I also went with North. The thing is, to be quite honest, this was a difficult challenge for me because I really like all of the albums, and there's something on, I don't mean to do like a soliloquy here, but there's something on each album that makes it special, I think. So it's so hard when that happens, to say, oh, well, this one's better. But I kind of think I know why this one ranked last, and maybe it says something about me. I don't know, but it was more maybe upbeat, and it had less of like the darker,
Yeah.
heavier bassy sounds that I kind of
Yeah.
enjoy. But I like all these songs too. I mean, Overjoyed, super pretty.
Yes, that's a beautiful
They,
song.
I mean, all of them really. And I was trying to put notes down to them, but to like justify my decision, but all my notes were good, so I had to pick a number 5, and this was it.
All right. Alex, your number 5.
Well, now that I'm back alive,
Please.
I actually went North as well. I thought this was a very slow building album. I didn't think it really picked up until the middle. I thought, being someone who was very single oriented, that this was very tame in that regard, especially when you get into the She's So Means of the album itself. But I felt like songs like English Town, and How Long, once you got into, the 7, 8, 9th track build of this album, I thought that's where it started to pick up a little bit. But again, for the sake of a 5 album catalog for us to judge, I thought this was the least grabbing at the beginning
Mhm.
of the track catalog, and I thought this one really took the longest to get into. That it felt very. I genericized this band as a coffee shop band. You can put them on any of the 5 albums. No one's gonna cause an uproar. There's no obscenity to worry about. There's no
True.
vibe to their music that's really gonna throw you off kilt when you hear it or change your mood from what it was if you're looking for that wheelhouse. And I thought this album really kind of fit that mold, but also stayed in it a little too much.
Mm.
And I thought it was very generic in that sense. That if you really tried to play this album as a a pick or a favorite of the night. It really doesn't do anything to move you. So yeah, this kind of stayed toward the bottom toward me.
So I am not like the rest of the crew. And
You never are.
I have Where the Light Goes. Where the Light Goes is a very joyous record. It's joyful and triumphant. And I don't mind that, but I don't know this was it Wattenberg or something? He was, I don't know how he got into the project of Matchbox 20. There was some just, I don't know, there just wasn't that catch, that hook, that, I don't know, that edge. Not much of it. They're not that edgy, but actually Rob Thomas's vocal delivery can be if he wants it to be, right? How he drops out and out. And as I get to the final part of this, these last three, these 5, 4, and 3, they are so close in.
Yeah, I would agree with this.
Right, and it's kind of a tell. I don't know what we were talking about the other day. Oh, well, I know what it was. It had to do with albums that when they sell so many copies and you're like, holy crap, right? But did that have to do with a single that drove everything? And you look at the album and you go, God, that's a throwaway track. That's a throwaway track. When I say throwaway track, I'm not like saying that it didn't get played on radio and that it just doesn't have any, it doesn't feel like the band was that impressed with it. Right,
Yeah.
it didn't connect as well, or it didn't feel like everything was on all cylinders. This
They needed to
band
put something in the slot of 7 between 6 and 8.
there are some as we get to that, there's one reason why our order changes. I just sit there and I go, wow, that anyway, I won't give it away. But my number 5 is Where the Light Goes. Good stuff on there. I think it just it too long between albums. Too long. Was that 11 or so years, something like that? So.
It was 11. It was
Yeah.
11 years.
Yeah, number
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, that was 11.
Oh, I'm gonna go next. Okay, so my number 4 is Where the Lights Go, and I'm glad that I got to hear what you had to say about it, Mark, because I couldn't put my finger on it. I hadn't really listened to anything off of this album prior to this exercise, even though I had heard of it. It didn't feel like it was Matchbox 20 to me, where all the other 4 albums did.
Okay.
The only thing is that there were more pleasing songs to me on this one than North. So that's why it came in ahead of North. I thought it was just easier to listen to.
Sorry. So my number 4, I went with Where the Light Goes. But I disagree, I disagree with both of you. So I'm less familiar with this one, which is why it fell to 4, but I look at it this way too. They've been together forever, and for some reason it just sounds like they picked up where they left off to me. The sound sounds fresh. It doesn't sound like old.
Yeah, true.
His voice, I mean, I've always had this thing with him. I think I can't say that they've ever been like one of my top bands. I always enjoy it when they come on, when he comes on, when he's solo or with Matchbox 20. But he's got like perfect sound or pitch or something going on, which is crazy. And this album, I don't know how he does it too with his voice. He seems to be able to blend it just right. Maybe it's not him, maybe it's the production, but the guitars and everything, it's incredible. So anyway, not as familiar with this one. It might have even moved up maybe 1, maybe not though, but yeah.
Cool.
Alex.
In honor of what's gonna probably sound like, based on the way I'm feeling, the most predictable order of this entire show, I went with the same album as U2. Where the light goes.
Welcome.
You know.
And more similar to what Sue said than what Deb said. I felt like this album, when there was a 10-year gap between their third and fourth album, and there was an 11-year gap between their fourth and fifth album, I really felt like this most recent album was, to what Sue said, it was a fallback into what was comfortable. It was them. It was their sound. They retreated into the safety net of this is who we are. We're not expending any boundaries. We're not pushing the envelope. But we're doing better than what was our fourth album, what was North, where we didn't sound in sync in a way. It was a different sound. It was maybe not, and we talked about this in Album Review Saturday when we talked to Sycophant, that it was, where do you push the envelope and alienate your fan base, which I thought North kind of maybe did in this sense, as opposed to where do you fit the mold of what you know works and you retreat to it and you stay with it and you go with what works to your sound. And I thought this did that. It wasn't a bad album per se, but it was just kind of one of those ones where you hear and go, this isn't special, this doesn't move me, it's kind of stays where it sits for me. And I really found that out of this album. It was a retreat in a way. Again, I thought the middle of the album did the most to put a dent in me. From a listening standpoint, it really didn't do anything for me there was no surprise at the end. There was no real banger at the beginning that hooked me into it. It was one of those things that I listened into and went, okay, there's some gems in here that I, maybe didn't pay attention to as much as other times, but it really didn't do anything as a complete album for me. So I just knew this was Matchbox 20's sound, and it sounded a whole hell of a lot better than North did for me in that sense. So,
Yep.
Well, my switch there is North is my next. Now I find North to have a better sense of direction, which is the name of the album to begin with. So that being said, this is one of those albums where it could have been over, and instead of it being over, they wind up with more songs than they ever have had before. This is the only album to debut at #1, the only one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I love the mixing on here. I love the way it sounds, and of course that's I think it's Chris Lord Alge, I believe, or I'm pretty sure, who's done all kinds of other projects. But She's So Mean was out, Overjoyed. But my two songs on here, I love, like Sugar and Sleeping at the Wheel. I just
funny. I was an English Town fan off this album.
Oh yeah. Well, English Town was Doucette's track, right? So
yep.
And I think a lot more here were written by those members than Rob Thomas on this particular record. So that's mine. Deb, #3.
I think, by the way, on that note, Thomas wrote 4 of them off of this that he's fully credited to. Yeah.
So my #3 is Mad Season. Just because I like #1 and #2 so much that there was no way I was gonna dethrone one of them. I have to say though, listening to it again, and had been a long time, If You're Gone, is it on that album? If You're Gone?
Yeah,
it had such a Goo Goo Dolls feel to me.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I had to stop and go, wait a minute, I thought that was the Goo Goo Dolls. Or wait a minute, did they steal the Goo Goo Dolls? Or did the Goo Goo, it was just had that feel to it. And I love the Goo. So but I felt bad having to put it at #3, but Somebody had to go there.
So
So I went with More Than You Think You Are. Why? I don't know why. Like I said, this is just really difficult for me. So, I'll just say what I liked about it. I like it. For me, it definitely had more of a rocker, edgy feel to it, compared to the earlier stuff. I felt it went to a deeper, like, emotional level, but it didn't go emo. It was a nice space. And, I don't have to name the songs on it. It was a good, solid
Mhm.
album, and yeah, had to pick one. So that was it.
Yep.
Alex.
It took the project of going back through these albums. I think both yourself and or someone like you and Mad Season were probably the first two albums that were really in my full album wheelhouse of my lifetime. So I
Sure.
think
Sure.
both these albums respectively came out when I was 4 and when I was 7, 8
Yep.
years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I put Mad Season in this, and it was really hard to put that at 3, I think, in this catalog for nostalgia purposes. But I really find that this album isn't deserving of a 5 album catalog. The feeling of being the middle child. I don't think this album deserves that for me. You know, Bent and If You're Gone are the first two singles off that album, and probably some of the most recognizable. I think the title track of Mad Season was very well made. I was always a fan of, and I'm trying to relate this back to my experience as a kid who had no knowledge of how an album should be constructed. That Black and White People and Crutch really grabbed me as the second and third track at the beginning. The reason this kind of falls in that third album wheelhouse for me is it lost me at the end. It was I thought it was a really good composition from the beginning. I thought the middle held well, and towards the end, I kind of got bored with the album early on. And I really tried to, as I knew this episode of our channel has come on, to go back through these albums, try to dispel some of those preconceived notions. And I really
Yeah.
didn't feel like this album did that for me.
Mhm.
But I do feel like what was there was better than the last two that we had mentioned at 4 and 5. So
Okay.
I thought Mad Season kind of falls at 3 for me on that one.
Yeah, I have to agree, Alex. I was looking at my rating system that I did, and it was the end of that album. The last 2 or 3 songs, I just went,
It didn't keep me there. It just
yeah,
kind of was like,
yeah.
okay, can I just go to the next thing that I want to listen to now?
All right. So I think you're all wrong, except Sue.
Wow, you all get to join me for once. Ha ha!
I don't understand. They start a rock in that album and it drops. It's like they abandoned all. They had disease. They had Mick Jagger's writing on this freaking record, right? And it's just the person they were working with. He done every all kinds of bands and they were definitely on this edge of rock. Don't get me wrong. The first album to the second album to the third, this is actually a progression that you can tell.
Mhm.
Okay, because the first record is not that solid. It's just not. It had a single and it sold a shitload of copies. All right, crud loads of copies. All right, there are throwaways on that record. Okay, now we're at this third album. All right, this what is it? More Than You Think You Are. I like the title because I think it's people's perception of what Matchbox 20 was going to be, and this is more than they think they are. Right? They can rock, they can play. I'm imagining the live shows. I never saw them live. Were a little bit more rock than laid back, but there's still the ballad comes. You still got. I mean, I think they lost the Grammy to Foo Fighters for in that year. So not that there's a measurement of that, but they're just saying they were nominated again. They didn't win. I think this is the album that I don't remember the end. So for that reason alone, I felt like you were committed. Disease, Unwell, Bright Lights, Downfall, All I Need, All Fit. I mean, that's five tracks, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. So Sad, So Lonely was like a hidden track on there. I don't even remember what that sounded like. So it lost me. This is the only album that lost me, but it's so strong at the beginning, and it's such a compliment to the first two that came out as progressive, because I love my music to progress. So that's why it landed at 3. Deb, number 2.
Well, I had a hard time between my number 1 and number 2. And so I want to separate myself from what you just said. So I'm gonna decide now that my number 2 is Yourself or Someone Like You. Only because there were throwaway songs.
Yes, I agree.
However, 3 a.m. and Real World, I mean, they're just so good that I think that maybe if those other songs were on one of their other albums, you might not realize that maybe they wouldn't be a throwaway song if they were put on one of their other albums. I don't know. I just think they were so noticeably different.
Or change the arrangement.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's, Alex talking about the time frame of some of these albums in relationship to when he started listening. I mean, yeah, 96. His little friend there, Christopher, was 3, and I was in the car a lot driving him around in that car seat so he'd go to sleep. And I had that album in my CD player. So it's nostalgic for me too.
You know what's funny about saying that and just relating it to you and I, Deb, in that regard? I don't know that this was one that my parents got me into. I think this might have been, for all intents and
Alex's
purposes, yeah, this might have been, for all intents and purposes, this might have been one of the albums that, just from casual radio or Casey Kasem or some bullshit like that, this might have been one of the first ones that I kind of like, hey, Dad, kind of seeking this one out, like kind of digging some parts of this.
Yeah.
And it was purchased in our house, and it was one that ended up in my little, not jukebox, but one of those stereos with the 2 speakers on the side. You press the button and the fucking lid comes up and go. Like
boombox, right?
Yeah, it's a boombox.
Mad Season only preceded Yourself or Someone Like You for me, because that album alone kind of was the Kickstarter of, hey, I heard this on the radio, I want to hear more.
Yep.
And that's a precursor in my evaluation of it. So
there you go.
Sue, your number 2.
All right. Well, I was kind of thinking along the lines of what you said last round, Mark. For me, I went with Mad Season as number 2 because you can tell the progression from their debut. And I enjoy seeing that, and I also enjoy it. It felt a little even bluesy. I don't know, how do I say this? Like, and I mean this in a good way. Again, because they do come off as so perfect. It sounds safe and polished. They're just their band in general. But I like the fact, again, like there's a lot of experimental sounds on this one that and I'm not a musical person. I can't really explain it, but just when you listen to the little details, it's pretty cool what they do. So that is why I picked that for number 2.
Okay. Alex, number 2.
Man, I'm gonna steal a reason from all of you. More Than You Think You Are is my number 2. But I think you steal the experimental sound element that Sue talked about, I think, on this album. I think when you hear Yourself or Someone Like You, and then you go to Mad Season in chronological order, I thought those two blended really well going forward. I think when you get to More Than You Think You Are, you really started to hear them start to tinker with what their tempo was, their heaviness. They started to add a little more guitar to it.
Mhm.
Sneaky fun fact, Bright Lights is one of my karaoke playlist songs of things that I would sing.
Oh,
Oh, that's awesome. Let's go.
yes.
Behind Photograph by Nickelback, that one has been in my wheelhouse as something that I very much enjoyed. I was pleasantly surprised by the back end of this album. I really thought this kind of held a tune that stayed very consistent. It pushed a little bit of their boundary of what their opening 2 albums were. Honestly, it wasn't until 10 minutes ago that I realized that Mick Jagger was a songwriter on this album.
So
Right. But what I'm saying with that is like that song was a mixture of those two. And what I'm really trying to pan to is to be in that same talking point, that same aura, for Rob and Mick to be in that wheelhouse. And I think Rob, honestly, whether it's his solo stuff or Matchbox 20, I think this album really makes me want to bring this point up is you don't know if you haven't experimented like us four have, and you know what songs are Matchbox and what are Rob solo, you can get lost in that wheelhouse of which one is which. And I think that's a credit to what Rob can do as a solo writer himself. And to pair that with some of what Mick can add to something, someone of his ilk, for lack of better words, I really think this album had a little bit of a shock value for me at 3 in their rollout. And I thought it was much better than it was maybe received from a popular critic standpoint. So this one lands at 2 for me. I thought it was the best style switch up in their discography wheelhouse, and it was really enjoyable. And it surprisingly superseded Mad Season, which I thought would easily chronologically fall at 2 for me, and it didn't.
my number 2 is the debut, the Woodshed Diaries. That's what it was supposed to be called till they went to somebody's play and the person said that particular line and phrase that way, and they're like, wow, that just stuck with them, and they decided. And the record company had already printed albums, and
Oh
they
my
were
God.
convinced to
Mm.
change it once they heard it. So that's a cool story. Anyway, this is Rob Thomas mostly on the writing of this record. Well, actually, this is Rob Thomas on a lot. The most is coming up. He's all right. There are some other people on this. 3 a.m. was written by a boatload of people, technically, which it's nostalgic. It's the banger. It's the, it's got Real World, Long Day, 3 a.m. Push. I mean, the start of that record, but then, and a girl like that, who gives a shit? Awful track. Did they just go, we got to do something with this song? I got to have it. No, I don't. It just, there's where I said, there's no way you're going to be number 1. All of a sudden, what, we just went into pop realm? No, I'm not interested. Just, then you're back to good and Damn and Argue and Cody. And it's a really good record. It's only 46 minutes long.
Yeah.
All right. And it's got 12 tracks. So I think they timed it right. Everything kind of moved well. These are songs that can be played acoustically, they can be played electrically, they can be changed up. And I've heard them do live stuff and change the songs, and they still have that grip. And his melody and his way of lyrically delivering it changes a bit too, which is nice. Okay, so I'll say this now. I think of him as Phil Collins in Genesis. He has the grip, the vocal, and the musicianship to do what he wants to do. He has stuck with Matchbox 20, and he's not changed Matchbox 20. He's let Matchbox 20 be what it was evolution to be with the band members. He does obviously hold a bit of the songwriting a little bit over things, but I think the band gets it. I know they had early problems at this time where band members were thinking this might be it or whatever during the third album or second or third albums, but this is good stuff. It's an album that stands the test of time. It's my number 2, but it still has Girl Like That. I don't know.
Well, we don't like that song, do we?
No.
So you guys all know that my first love of music, came from a little bit earlier than all of you. So I'm more of when I got my independence listening to music, it was 70s, and it was more of, progressive rock, Led Zeppelin type stuff, even back like a Billy Joel. So fast forward to me driving in the car on the 290 going towards the Niagara Falls Boulevard, and a song comes on, and I go, what the fuck is this? And it was this guitar, and this very familiar guitar and very familiar vocal. They don't go together though. How is this happening? And it was Santana and Rob Thomas on Supernatural Smooth. So I was just blown away. Okay, so that is actually why 2002 More Than You Think You Are is my number 1, because there's definitely influence on some of these songs that the blending of Carlos Santana and Rob Thomas came to garner
Deb,
together.
I didn't mention it when I said this album. I could not agree with you more on this. You're coming
All
back
right.
you're coming back to light to me.
I will
on
say the
some
horns
parts
have always been part of the band, though.
correct.
Okay, and I don't think
But the
it's
rock
more. I think
the guitar
I think
strip, yes.
Yes,
it was
but
also the movement of the music too. That
yes,
movement, and when you take
yes.
Rob Thomas, the way his phrasing is, and you've got Santana and their syncopation with their beats, and you put that together, you've got this. I always feel like the music's going with the shoulder, and that's
Yeah.
and with a little bit of an attitude. And for the reasons you said, Mark, that you didn't like this, exactly why I do like it. And I feel that this being their third album, I was loving what I was seeing with the band, but that's also because it was growing a little bit into what I come from my past.
And that's a
So-
diamond record too.
Is it?
But you know what? To Deb's point, like
I mean, Santana's album is a diamond.
it's
Yes.
it's not that this had a horn section that fit their mold or anything. It really did take the shape of that single that collaborated the two. That I knew I was gonna forget a point at some point in this episode.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome.
And Deb just brought it back to light. That was the one that really shone that album for me. I think maybe over Mad Season in my wheelhouse. So yeah, Deb, that's a great point.
And of course, Unwell. I mean, that song,
Yeah.
Unwell. I know every single word, even if I haven't heard it for years, and then it comes on. It's like his phrasing. I just love his phrasing. So that's it. That's what I got.
No. Hey, Sue, what do you got at number 1?
Well, by process of elimination, I went with
the EP.
That would have been a surprise.
Yeah.
I should have done that. But I did Yourself or Someone Like You, their debut. I thought it was, a stellar debut. And you have to remember too, it came out in 96, and we all know everything that came out in 96. So for them to be able to hold their own with their poppy rock, even if they had some some lighter stuff in there, it was a great album. It was a great introduction. And there was even like a little tinge of alternative, not very much, but a little bit something. But I have to say, it's so funny because Debbie kept talking about the phrasing, and it was bothering me as I was listening through everything again. Sometimes, like, I was trying to think, I kept having this other singer in my head, and so Dan Reynolds of Imagine Dragons,
Mm.
they have a similar pattern
Mhm.
in some ways when they're spitting out sometimes. But anyway,
Yep.
I just had to
Absolutely. Mhm.
say that. But anyway,
Oh.
yeah, I liked it. Good debut. And
Okay. Alex, you're number one.
Well, process of elimination, things that Sue said. I can only imagine what my number one is. First off, track number 7, named after one of our panelists. Damn.
yeah.
Where's
Well,
my royalty?
Yeah.
2
I-
cents.
I would start collecting royalties if I was you, based on the amount of times that word gets said. Why isn't that trademarked? No, I don't think anything that anyone has said so far about this album is wrong at all. I think Mark is right. Talking about Girl Like That is very much a knock that I had in the album. Not just as a 31 going on 32-year-old. I had that same opinion back when I first heard this album in first grade, something
I'm
like
like,
that.
what's that?
Yeah, well, it's only one song out of 12, so
Correct.
it happens,
And,
right? There's
and,
always there can be doozy. There can be doozies.
right. And I'm gonna get into my other points. I like this. I think that there's a simplicity in how, if you look at this track list just by name, forget the music. The simplicity behind just these
It's true.
track titles don't allude to anything. They don't alter your mind in some
Mhm.
capacity of what's to come. Damn, argue, Cody, busted, shame, hang at the end. The fuck is that song gonna be about? I don't know. I have to listen to
Mhm.
figure that out. And I think there's something that I like in this a little bit, not in style, but in methodology to the Foo Fighters. That first album you come out with, you don't have restrictions. You don't have rules. You get to kind of establish your style. Matchbox 20 really did that with this album.
Mm.
Everything you heard from here on out was the measuring bar to the final chronologically 4 albums of Matchbox 20. They were all measured to this album. Does this sound like them? No. Or yes. Every track in between.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I really thought that because of that, this album deserved their number one, because it really was their landmark, cornerstone piece, standing point as an album, or sorry, as an artist in a group, to really trudge forth their path. You guys said it. Mark said it earlier. It was a great intro to the album. I don't know how you come out with Real World, Long Day, 3 a.m. Push, and Back to Good in 5 of your first 6 tracks and not say, holy fuck, what a start. It just was what pushed that band into the forthcoming. And
Right.
you can lose yourself in 7 through 12 of that album, from the standpoint of what did I just listen to before that, and you're still trying to recover from Girl Like That in the Back to Good and in forthcoming. But it was a
Poor
damn
girl like that.
it was a damn good start. It was really what that band will always be measured up to. This is what you started with. You can try to push yourself from it. Is it good or bad compared to this? It's that's always going to be the album that kind of stands the litmus test of time with this band. So yeah, I think yourself or someone like you takes one for me, and rightfully should. So to Mark.
Okay. So I wanted to debut, right? So Matchbox 20 is a diamond album. It's actually 12 million. Might be higher than 12 million now. I'd have to, but I know 12 million was the last count. So on that, Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses.
Oh, what a
18
parallel.
million. Okay, so
Wow.
it's nearly coming up on double diamond. But still, give you an idea, right, of how important in the overall scheme that was, right? So they come out with a debut, and then they significantly change the sound. And they had to, because it was a far cry from when that album was released. Most bands put out an album in at least another 2 years. This was much farther than that down the road. This is Mad Season, my number one, and always has been my number one. This is 60 minutes long, 13 tracks. This is a dedication to better songwriting, to bigger orchestration.
I thought you were going to say Casey Kasem when you said dedication. Long distance one at that.
No, and I don't. So why doesn't it sell 12 million copies? You've got, you know, you don't have, I guess, apparently the song that the connections there. I don't know, but Black and White People is a tremendous track that never got the release. I think they picked wrong songs, to be honest with you. I know they did Last Beautiful Girl and Mad Season, right? And If You're Gone. Now, If You're Gone maybe should have been that 3 a.m. But it just, you know, that's just still 4 million. So you're still selling records. And there is not a single solitary throwaway track on the entire record. Every song sounds, drives, and has some sort of, even Rest Stop in the center has a very darkened layer and delivery that Thomas does so well. And this is the album that he wrote the majority of it himself. So, I mean, I think there's only like there's not, I don't think there's a single track on it that he didn't write, but but most of them are him by himself. There are no other ones on there. So, and then obviously bonus tracks too. If you actually have some of the different bonus that they have, You and I, and Suffer Me is on that. So there's bonus tracks that were never played either too.
You are correct, by the way. Thomas was on every single piece, even the ones that had someone else. He was a partial feature
co-writer. Yeah. So still every time that'll be the one I pull out. That way I don't have to hear that girl song.
You know what? You know what's funny too? I will say probably the best album art of the 5 too as well. I don't know why. I think Mad Season.
Oh, you got the Mad Hatter, Mad Season. Yeah.
I think the album art. And you know what? Again, I'm going back to my naive mentality as a kid. That
your
innocence.
Your innocence.
Yeah, that album art made me want to pull that record out of the bunch.
Okay.
I can't explain why. That was a subconscious feeling I had at that innocent age. Something about that made me want to pull that out of the record bin compared to even the debut album.
So now
throw that in there too.
That part of the show, right? So first, let's go. We'll go different. We're going to go the bottom up this time. All right. Are they the band is merely a shadow of themselves, little relevance, except maybe a song here or there. It's a catalog you'll listen to less and less over time.
So let's start there. Does anyone agree with that?
Just let him finish.
Yeah, I want the
rest.
Opening act. There is something special. There's an album or songs. They have so much more to prove, or potentially they are comfortable where they are, perhaps. Club level. They have some good albums, the songs, but not as reliable, nor are they as inventive. Then there's relevant. The albums are getting better, much better as they move forward, maybe even hitting a stride and truly on their way to potential greatness. Iconic. They're very memorable, very influential to the listener and the industry. They're trend-setting and generational. And then finally, legendary. The entire catalog is near perfection, reliable, inventive, sincere, and influential, and it has no throwaway tracks on it.
Well, do I go first? Yeah, I put it between relevant and legendary.
Relevant and iconic?
Iconic, yes. Okay. Sorry. Not legendary. No way.
No. Iconic relevant.
There you go.
Sue.
Ironic.
I am gonna go with relevant. because obviously, well, we've talked about it a lot tonight, how they did progress. And yeah, I think that's the best choice. I wish I could give them iconic. I mean, their lyrics, there's a lot about them that could be iconic, but for me personally, only because again, with this latest album, just getting into it, I'm just gonna go with relevant. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's because 96 to now, I still feel like they're a new band. I don't know
Oh,
why.
that's just your age.
It's just weird. It's like, oh, they have so much more to do to prove to be. I don't.
No,
They're
but
the same
Weird.
odds that started this.
but to
You know what I
Sue's
mean?
point, I mean, how do you go from your debut album and you unknowingly or unhurtingly at that time go 4 years to your next album, and then in your third through fifth album have a 10 and 11 year gap?
Yeah.
There is an element that makes you feel new. There's not a lot of sample out there, and to Deb's point, she mentions
Getting
the
married
Rob
all
Tom.
the time.
Well, I wasn't gonna go there, but fuck, I
It
mean,
feels new. It feels new.
pot call the fucking kettle, I guess.
Mm.
I was gonna say that you referenced the single with Rob Thomas that was so good, but now you start to blur the lines of what's Matchbox 20 and what's Rob.
Yeah.
You now have to go figure out which one's which if you're a casual listener, and I think that you get into that point. It is tough because there is an iconic element. There is a more stable element where you know their sound. They're not progressing. They're falling into their wheelhouse of what's there. But there is a legendary status to that. You can identify the vocal. You can identify the sound. You know it's there. You know it's if you're for lack of better words, you're gonna play patio music one night. You need the safe play.
Kim
How's Matchbox 20 not? Well, we're not talking about the lanterns too, but you know what no one's gonna complain about. You don't have the old grouchy uncle, who's gonna complain about every little bit of something that can question censorship. You're gonna play Matchbox 20. That fits into that band wheelhouse that you can play that's safe and fits a vibe and a mold. And it does it takes a special artist to get into that wheelhouse, and it doesn't at the same time. They're not pushing an envelope. They're not developing a different sound. They're not, there's not a challenged comfort zone, so to speak. So I think there is a tough landing spot for Matchbox 20 in that really this
What's your
question.
score?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of in the middle. I would say it's in the iconic. Because you can find ways to justify identifying it there. But man, that part's tough because you don't want to associate iconic with Matchbox 20, but I think the sound can
How
definitely
about halfway between iconic and coffee shop?
honestly, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, I mean, it kind of, right? Like,
that's kind of where that's where I've been kind of alluding to without using those words. But
right,
now that someone else has said it,
comforting and familiar.
You know what? Comforting is the best word to put in there. Is it's iconic in a comforting way. You know where it falls.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's like a used blanket. Nice.
You know what? It is. The used blanket may look ugly and run down and used to shit, but you know what? You know when you throw that over you, you're gonna be in a nap in 15 minutes. So like it's reliable and it's there.
But I think too, we're talking about them like almost like they're bland at this point. But I think when you think about it and you dig deeper, that maybe then it's their talent level that you can't ignore it and So
Yeah.
you are interested to hear what they're gonna do because they always show up. They show up
Yeah.
every time.
Well, I think that's exactly it. Is it's kind of like it's an old fashioned. If someone makes you one, you know what you're expecting out of it, but you're always hoping there's a little bit of a twist to make it more than what it is.
There you go.
Oh.
That's what they are. They're an old fashioned. Like you know what you're getting when you order it, but you're always hoping for a little bit more that can make it more special than what you
Make it
already
craft.
preconceived in your
And
head.
you
More
already know they're
craft,
using
old-fashioned.
top shelf liquor.
You just that's when they bring Mick Jagger down.
Well, he wasn't. So for me, the band is relevant. Rob Thomas could approach iconic status, possibly.
I would
All
agree
right,
with this.
but I
so
don't
far.
think that's going to happen because he's had these albums as of late that they're falling into the Bryan Adams kind of mojo, right?
No.
Although
Mm,
it's maybe it's too much. Maybe the simplicity it needs to come back. I mean, like not the last album, but I think Unknown something or other. I can't think of it right now. But he's got Lawrence Fishburne on the record. He's got Victor Induzio on there. He's got all these people, and it's a conglomeration of craziness. And I think he's a songwriter, right? And the stuff that happened with Santana, that's iconic. Right? That's going to be remembered forever. Smooth is going to get played until the earth burns.
Yep.
yeah.
And that's
The earth burn.
right. And right up there with Welcome to
While
the
it's burning.
Yeah,
It's
we're only
smooth.
20 or less years away. So I mean that
it's not the end of the
fits.
world.
I'll be gone.
So yeah,
We're all
for me.
close.
That's where this catalog
Yeah.
lies. It is a comfort thing is
Yeah.
good. I think it's also a great opener to people who have not or weren't born in that era. All right,
Yeah.
to go back and they can
Yes.
find something that has quality, has a great lyrical content, does not
Yes.
have to drop vulgarities in any way, shape, or form that I'm
Yeah.
aware of.
To
I'm
that
saying it's up
to-
there with Hootie and the Blowfish or anything of that nature from a standpoint of really comfortable, or Fleetwood Mac.
No, but you know what? You bring a point up in that, like the lyrics in the songwriting of these. I don't think any of us have ever questioned it on any of the 5 albums. I think every album we, even down to the bottom of that discography to each of our ratings, you listen to that album because you knew the songwriting was going to be there. There was going to be a meaning to the lyrics in every single one of their albums. Whether or not it resonated with you is a different story.
Yeah.
But you knew there was
Right.
an intentionality and an effort put into that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a highlight to this band. And like you said, it's a great intro. I don't think you realize, and I sure as hell didn't, because when my memory and my music started kicking in was probably likening it to a school grade, first through third grade. So that was 01 through 03 for me. And that's where yourself or someone like you kicked in for me. And now that I'm older, I go, holy shit, that was still 4 to 7 years behind me as a
Mhm.
96 album.
Mhm.
And to see how much that carried weight through that and to progress into my innocence and my, lack of, for better words, control of what I listen to, I think says a little bit to that weight for where that kind of came in. So, yeah, I think, like you said, this is a great intro to that era, that genre, that late 90s, that softer listen that had a quality piece to it, for sure.
So, Music Multiverse listeners, what did you think of the Matchbox 20 catalog? Did you know it? Are you going to go back to it, explore it, or did you think that this show would be this fucking long for only 5 albums?
You can meet up for all the swearing that they don't do.
That's kind of that's our MO.
Ironically.
Yeah. I gotta pee.
We're on the web at beyondyourradio.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course. Articles, videos, podcasts. It's all about albums, bands, artists, anything we can
You're
get on
listening to this while you're peeing, for all we know.
your radio with us, a real music appreciation channel. We will pick a longer. I think the Joni Mitchell thing was shorter, and there's 19 records.
Please listen to our stream.
Thanks for watching and happy listening.